I'm Avia Goldie, and I am the co-chair of the Safe Harbor Yes campaign to pass Constitutional Amendment Number 2, which will be on the ballot this November. I want to thank you all for being here. Each and every day, there are children throughout Georgia who are being sexually trafficked. We must do all that we can do to help rescue them and to ensure that our state has the resources available to help these children resume a normal life. This November, every voter in Georgia can stand up for these children by voting yes to pass the Safe Harbor Constitutional Amendment. I have the honor of introducing a group of speakers who have been champions in the fight to end child sex trafficking in Georgia. But before I do so, I would like to thank all of you for being here today, all of our partners and sponsors. For many of you, November's vote will just be the next critical step in a long-time fight to end child trafficking in Georgia. Our speakers today include former Mayor Shirley Franklin, Attorney General Sam Olens, State Senator Renee Unterman, President and CEO of Street Grace, Bob Rogers, and child trafficking survivor and advocate Dorsey Jones. I would like now to turn the podium over to Mayor Franklin.
Just for the record, I've been out of office 7 years, so it's okay to just call me Shirley. Thank you very much, and thank you for including me in this program. Oh, wow. That's an alert. There's flooding. Everybody's ready? Got 5 days of water at home, right? But I'm really delighted to join you today. I'm especially pleased that you chose this place for this announcement. It's a very special place in Atlanta's history, and I spent a few minutes just going through the King Collection exhibit that had his personal writings from the 1950s and 60s. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, since you're here, just take 5 minutes and walk over and look at them. It's really pretty compelling. The button that he has in that collection calls Live Life and Love, Stop the Violence. Pretty amazing that we're still trying to reach that goal. Anyway, I'm here because I'm voting yes for Safe Harbor, the constitutional amendment. That constitutional amendment will take us one step closer to doing what we all need to do, which is to ensure that the children who are within our midst are taken care of, regardless of their circumstances. Attorney General, I got it right, Olens, and I were just talking about our early conversations about the issues around child trafficking and exploitation. And in the early days, seems like forever ago, a decade or so ago, this community, like most communities around America, had their heads in the sand. We were actually embarrassed by the information. But the information is so compelling that over time, a short period of time, we now can come together and say, indeed, children are trafficked, and in our own state, and within our own midst, and we can do something about it. We can support programs, we can support advocacy, and in this case, we can support funding that will allow us to be sure that children can return to normal lives. So I came for one reason only, to say I'm voting yes. I'm voting early. Mr. Olens will not let me vote more than once, but it's going to be a big yes in November, and early voting starts on the 17th, at least in Fulton County, I believe. I'm not as up on all of the details as I used to be. A special thank you to our representative, Underman, and others who have made a huge difference in making this possible. There's a saying I used to use when I was in city government, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that is the future we're trying to create today, a future that is better for boys and girls who find themselves in crisis and trafficked. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to welcome the Attorney General, Sam Olens.
So when I was chair of COB and of the Atlanta Regional Commission, I had the honor to work with, at that time, Mayor Shirley Franklin all the time. And unlike many of the elected officials from the larger jurisdictions, she showed up, and she was a regular around the table. And Mayor Franklin started talking about children being sold for sex. And as she just stated, there was significant denial. No one wanted to hear about it. I think you actually had some billboards right out the airport, and once again, what are you talking about? What is this? And I was then elected in 2010 to be Attorney General, and I went to a program, got a whole bunch of statistics. I had heard some information about this through Mayor Franklin. The statistics were downright disastrous, not just for Georgia, but for a large part of our country. And came back, immediately went to work with my new staff, with Senator Unerman, and at that time, Representative Ed Lindsay. And I was told, you know, you're a brand new AG, you're not really supposed to be going across the street and passing legislation. But I figured when it came to children, you can do it. And we ended up passing House Bill 200 across the street. I think we had minimal no votes in both the House and the Senate. Both Representative Lindsay and Senator Unerman did yeoman's work in that regard.
Attention visitors, the Center for Civil and Human Rights will be closing in 30 minutes. Think about how information you can become a member of the center by making a tax-deductible donation today. Thank you so much for visiting. Have a great evening.
And you could write that tax-deductible check to the museum. No. So Senator Unerman had been working for about 2 or 3 years in the legislature trying to pass legislation. So Senator Unerman had been trying to pass legislation, and she was doing baby steps. But as she would admit, she was swimming uphill. And when we all worked together in 2011, we made huge changes in our law. For a child that's a minor under duress or coercion to be trafficked, the law then went to 25 or 50 years or life. And a trafficker involved both the buyer or the seller. Because one of the big things that we pay a lot of attention to is that the buyer is just as guilty as the seller. If you're buying a 12-year-old child, you deserve to spend an awful lot of time in jail, just as you're the seller. So ever since we passed House Bill 200 and a myriad of other bills, now Representative Welch with Representative Lindsay out of the legislature is taking the lead for us on a lot of legislation in the House. It's all about education. You know, you can pass all the bills you want, but that doesn't solve the problem. You've got to change human behavior. So we do training all over the state each and every week to prosecutors, to police officers, detectives. We're actually doing training October 6th at Emory Law School to train juvenile court judges and superior court judges so that they will be better in the courtroom on handling these issues. And we do a lot of work with the general public on demand because once again, you've got to provide a deterrence. You've got to scare the buyer that if they buy these children, they're going to be put in jail. You know, we all remember the old days where the officer would allegedly say, run, we're only after the pimp, not the John. Well, if you're buying a little kid, there are no such words as pimp and Johns. You're a trafficker and you need to spend a lot of time in jail. So we work on the legislation, we work on attacking the demand. So there's one big problem thereafter, and that's restoration. That's helping those children who have had their innocence taken often for years at a time, sold up to 20 times a night, just as it will occur tonight throughout our state. So at this time, to talk about the restoration, which is the big part of Constitutional Amendment number 2, it's my honor to have Senator Unerman come forward.
Wow, we've come a long ways, and to look at this distinguished group that we're speaking with is just unbelievable. And you see I've got on my purple, right? Surely you need purple on. Shirley, I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm a former mayor, so I can call you Shirley, right? Thank you. It's a great day in Georgia, and it's especially a great day in Georgia when we're taking care of vulnerable children, and that's exactly what we're here today. And I have to agree with the mayor that here we are in this iconic building that is devoted to peace and tranquility and helping humanity. And you look at where we are in the calendar year and where we are with presidential politics. And I don't care what stripe you are, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, you name it, whatever you are, you look at that field, and typically on Labor Day is when things really get fired up, and things are fired up. And you talk about divisiveness and people not getting along. And this, I've been elected for 25 years now, and I have never seen the divisiveness. But what is so remarkable, and that we're in this iconic building that represents collaboration by one of our founding sons of the state of Georgia. And what brings us together? What brings us together is the unity that we care about vulnerable children. Not that you just care about the children of the state of Georgia, but you care about the children that are most at risk. And this journey has just been an unbelievable journey. And like the Attorney General says, I mean, he stepped out of all the Attorney Generals in the United States, he stepped out on a limb. And a lot of people in this room, it took a lot of courage. But what took even more courage was that collaboration that I'm talking about, that we have that unity, we have that ability to come together and care about these children. And that really is the message in the General Assembly that has carried us forward. Because when you look at the first votes, we started out in 2009. I couldn't even get a study committee on this particular subject matter. And you look at the tiny steps that we did take. We've changed about a dozen laws. And some of them were incremental, and some of them were huge, like House Bill 200. And then you look at Safe Harbor, and you look at Rachel's Law, and these are huge, huge steps. But it could not have been done without that collaboration. And Representative Ed Lindsay from Buckhead started out with me. He retired, and what did I do? I recruited another best member of the House. And Representative Andy Welch is from the South Side. And he actually came to me when we started working on Safe Harbor, and he said, you know, I have a little bit more seniority than Andy, and he said, Senator, do you mind if we change the name? And he was so scared to ask me. And I said, what do you mean change the name? It's Safe Harbor. You know, it's Safe Harbor all over the United States. It's Safe Harbor in New York. And he told me the story of Rachel, who was a survivor. And I said, I don't have any problem. Anyone who can have that courage, who can pick themselves up from the bottom of child abuse as a young child and be a survivor. And she testified for the very first time before a Senate committee, which is a big deal. It may not be a big deal to y'all. But to have a child who has been at that low a level come and testify. And she really was one of the reasons why the bill kind of skipped places and advanced so quickly. And I know we have a survivor here to speak. But it is a shame that we have to talk about survivors. And it's a shame that in 2009, I had to go to the Senate floor and talk about 50-year-old men having sex with 12-year-old little girls. It was a shame that I had to go to Angela's house, and I had preconceived notions about prostitution and 18-year-old girls, and I went to Angela's house, and there was the little bitty girl's shoes. They weren't size 8 women's shoes. They were still children's size shoes. So it's been a long journey. We have a long ways to go. Safe Harbor was difficult to pass because it is a giant step. I encourage you on November 8th. The most important thing about November 8th, and every elected official will tell you, is to go to the end of the ballot. Because a lot of people go into the polling booth, they're on the computer, and they vote for president or they vote for their favorite senator, hopefully. But they don't go to the end of the ballot. So you have to go. There's 4 amendments at the end of the ballot, 4 constitutional amendments and we're amendment number 2. The reason amendment number 2 is so important, I have been in the General Assembly for many years, and I'm vice chairman of appropriations, and I write into the budget funds that take care of children. Well, what happens when Renee's gone? What happens when Andy's gone? And what happens when you're in the middle of a recession and you got to keep the state afloat and you rob from social services to keep the roads going or to keep the bridges built? What this does, it sets up an indelible fund in perpetuity. No elected official, no matter what stripe you are, you can't go and rob this fund. And the reason the fund is so important is for restorative services for children that are at risk and children that have been abused and children that are taken off the streets and out of the homes. What could be more important, and what could be more important in your individual legacy that you're leaving on humanity? Just like Martin Luther King left a legacy, you are leaving a legacy that is indelible in perpetuity for the rest of creation of the state of Georgia that will take care of these children that have not been taken care of before in 2008. That's a remarkable journey. I ask you to be inspired. Please be inspired. Please go out, tell your neighbors, tell your family. Everyone says to me, Renee, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. I said, you never, ever, because what if they don't go to the end of the ballot, and what if they don't vote? This is our one-time opportunity. A constitutional amendment is a 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate, and then the governor has to sign it. It's one of the most difficult things any legislator ever does. But can you imagine just saving one child? Angela's house was named after one child. Just saving one child in the state of Georgia is worth every effort. So I have to thank everyone here. I think these fines and the assets that are going to be put into this fund are going to take the state of Georgia a step further and leave that legacy for the children of Georgia. The one thing I think that Sam, I gave a speech on Sunday and my blood sugar dropped right out and I just almost fell out in the floor. So Sam, I'm going to tell you what you forgot today. What you forgot today, because I forgot a lot of things on Sunday. What you forgot was talking about the NGOs, the organizations, the advocacy organizations that you represent. I want to say thank you. The other thing I want to say thank you to is the media. The media has been there since 2008. We could not do this alone. We hope that the media continues until November 8th, and you're doing a fabulous job, and we are so appreciative. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Rogers, who is the new CEO. He's doing a fabulous job at Street Grace. And Mr. Rogers, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of Street Grace and all of the other local and statewide agencies that are working in very difficult situations and working very hard every day, I would like to say thank you to former Mayor Shirley Franklin for the courage to be an early adapter and to walk headstrong into this. To Attorney General Sam Olens for his unwavering support and leadership, and for Senator Renee Unterman for being a constant and clear voice, willing to speak everywhere at any time and to do it tirelessly on anything related to trafficking. Today we have before us an opportunity to do something that just doesn't occur that often. We have the ability collectively to put a system in place that will provide a means to impact generations of sexually exploited children in Georgia from this moment forward. This is a one-of-a-kind dedicated fund that will provide resources up to $1 million or $2 million a year to address the needs of our sexually exploited children. The passage of this Safe Harbor Amendment in this way, the time has come, and this is our chance. This is the most significant chance we've had collectively to date to provide desperately needed dedicated resources to children who deserve our support. And while at times we speak of this as a policy matter, and it is, we need better policies, we need better laws, we need more advocacy, more awareness, more education, but we cannot forget. We can't forget this is a human issue. These are our children, they're real kids, and they're being bought and sold every day in our state by members of our community. We've been fortunate in Georgia to have some terrific organizations leading on the issue of restorative care for at least the last 8 to 10 years. And they, along with others, have done the research. They've done tried and tested methodologies and approaches. And we now have factual, evidence-based research indicating what works, what doesn't, and what's still needed. We have a proven pathway out for our children that have been sexually exploited. We can now confidently offer hope, real hope. This journey of recovery is a long and complex one, and it cannot be traveled alone. Healing and restoration are also multifaceted. It will involve most of, if not all of, the following: rescue services, protection services, short-term residential care. Child survivors of sexual exploitation experience depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress symptoms, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, hyperarousal, avoidance, disassociation, preoccupation with danger, self-criticism, blame, impulsivity, sexual reactivity, defiance, ADHD, substance abuse, personality disorders, and that doesn't even contemplate the physical and medical issues that accompany most. Long-term residential care is needed. Safety concerns from traffickers. Often these children cannot be reunified with their family because they may have been involved or participated in the trafficking. Current mental health research indicates that adolescents often get worse before they get better, and the symptoms tend to spike around 90 days. Current adolescents also show the most significant response to comprehensive treatment in the 18 to 24-month window. We need support groups, educational support and assimilation, social skills training. We simply can't cover them all now, but that's not an exhaustive list, but it's quite exhausting. The Safe Harbor Amendment is a huge step forward. It provides desperately needed funding so that these programs can be broadened, improved, and provided to the children in Georgia who have been subjected to horrific and unimaginable levels of terror and trauma. $1 to $2 million is a small fraction compared to the millions that in revenue that the traffickers will generate literally off the backs of our children. To help our children, this fund is everything. To them, it's hope, it's help, it's healing, it's freedom. To our children, this fund is life. I'm asking you too to become a champion of the cause and vote yes for the Safe Harbor Amendment in November. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to first say that it is truly an honor and a privilege to stand before you today and speak on my life. I grew up in South Georgia, Decatur County, and I was sexually exploited at the age of 11 by half of the community. When I turned 12 years old, they had already had their way with me. The devastation that entered into my home, I didn't have a pimp, I didn't have a John. Deprivation was my pimp. Waking up, not having food in the house or having running water or electricity, and for my neighbor to crumble up $20 and place it in my hand. I knew that that money could make a difference in my household. At 11 years old, I didn't wake up making a decision that I wanted to use my body for money. It was called survival. I thank God for the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about my life, but the most important thing today is not about my life, because I'm truly a survivor and I'm an overcomer, and I don't need anybody to have sympathy for me. The most important thing tonight is to talk about the Safe Harbor, the bill, Amendment 2, and what we're going to do on November the 8th. That's more important than me talking about what happened to me as a kid, because I truly don't look like what I've been through, and I thank God for that. Growing up in South Georgia, when these things were occurring to me in my life, I didn't have Safe Harbor. There was nothing safe about my life. So to hear the different people come before me and talk about how important this bill is, it brings so much joy to me because I know that there's somebody out there fighting for all the children that look like me, that are going through the things that we take for granted every day. See, if you don't know what it's like to be hungry or have low self-esteem or feel abandoned or unloved, you wouldn't know how to deal with that. But that's what a lot of young kids are faced with. They just don't have anybody to love them and to pour into them and teach them their value and their net worth and let them know that they're not for sale, they're not for lease, and they're not for rent. So what we need to do is understand what's going on with the Safe Harbor bill, let the community know, get involved, and realize that it's just not happening across seas. It's really happening right here in our backyards, on Metropolitan, on Far Road, on Old National. It's everywhere. But we really have the opportunity to make a difference. Just imagine if it was somebody that you loved, somebody that you care about. Imagine if it was happening to them, what would you do? I guarantee you, you would be the first one standing in line trying to make sure that Amendment 2 went through. I want to leave you with this thought in mind. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people would never forget how you made them feel. Being able to look in this room tonight, you make me feel happy. You make me feel glad because I had nobody to fight for me like you guys are fighting for the generation to come. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud that you're here and you're trying to make a difference. But it just don't stop on November the 8th. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep interlocking our hands together. It doesn't matter about the color because at the end of the day, it's all the same. Hurt is hurt. It has no color. So I want to thank you from the depths of my heart for being here today and voting yes for the Safe Harbor bill on November the 8th, 2016. Thank you and have an awesome day.
Really powerful, and we thank you for your commitment to survivors. And thank you to Bob and Senator Unterman and Mayor Franklin and Attorney General Olens for being here. We greatly appreciate everybody coming today and to show your support for the Safe Harbor Yes campaign. I'm Robin Roberts. I am one of the co-chairs of the Safe Harbor Yes Committee. We're supporting Constitutional Amendment 2 with a broad statewide coalition of organizations all across the state of Georgia who are concerned about child welfare, who are concerned about how we can help our own children find a better life after they've been rescued from sex trafficking. We're grateful for that support. We're hopeful we can build upon this wonderful momentum today to ensure that the majority of voters in Georgia know about this vote on November 8th and will vote yes on Safe Harbor, that they'll go down ballot and find this Constitutional Amendment 2. So we encourage all of you here today to help us spread the word, to tell your friends, tell your coworkers, talk about this in church. Let people know that this amendment is on the ballot for them to vote for. This is a grassroots campaign, and there's no big interest behind it that can get the word out across the state, so it's really up to all of us to do that work. Go like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, safeharboryes.com, and do everything you do to vote early, get your friends to vote, and vote yes on Safe Harbor. Thank you for coming today.